I understand because of the like remnant Vlatko animosity, which sounds like someone mispronouncing his last name, kind of.
That's a great drag Andonovsky character, Vlatko animosity. Hello, and welcome to Expected Own Goals. I am your host, Eric Morgan.
I'm Evan Davis, and Kieran is back because we have a very packed show today.
This is our big week. We've been waiting for all the numbers to start looking like real things that we can talk about, as opposed to anecdotal things that we can extrapolate from.
As the dear folks at American Soccer Analysis proved 3 years ago, xG differential starts to stabilize at about the 8 to 9 game mark. Well, guess where we are in the season? Every team has played either 8 or 9 games. When you start looking at peripheral data, you can begin to feel a little bit more comfortable that it is stable, not subject to as much noise as a game-to-game view of the season can be. And we can trust a team's performance in the previous 8 or 9 contests that they've engaged in. So we thought this was a good opportunity to kind of pause on our usual structure and do a big league-wide vibe check. Who's up? Who's down? Who are we right about? Who are we wrong about? Who's excited us? Who's disappointed us? And just about everything in between. There were 6 teams that we realized are either so obviously bad and we knew would be bad, or are living in a weird mushy middle that we don't necessarily have anything interesting to say about them in depth. Well, there's always something interesting to say about any of these teams. But we are going to take the opportunity to go deeper and explore some other areas of the league. So let's go around the room and just do a quick one-sentence hit on the 5 following clubs: Houston Dash, Angel City FC, the Portland Thorns, North Carolina Courage, and NJ Gotham FC. Let's start with the team that at least Eric and I projected to be top of the league, NJ Gotham FC. In one sentence, how's Gotham's season going for you, Eric?
Someone call Alfred. The Batmobile's broken. I don't know. They're fine. It's just going to take a moment to settle. I feel like we're starting to see a lot of new parts fitting together. Maybe not as well as we'd projected, but it feels like a totally competent team.
Kieran?
About as expected. I, before the season, said like Gotham would be bad, which is my facetious way of saying like this team everyone thinks is going to be amazing is probably going to be just fine. I think so far they haven't really found their rhythm of making like all the new players fit with the identity that they had before. I actually am like slightly more confident that they will get there than I was at the beginning of the season, which is not something that I thought would happen. But this is a team who's very much trending in the right direction.
They have been playing better in the last 2 or 3 contests, and it should also be noted that they actually haven't been able to get their Galacticos on the field at the same time because somebody's always hurt. Whether that's Rose Lavelle, who's just coming back, or Tierna Davidson, who's just gone on to the trainer's table. They have not been able to get everybody clicking in the same starting 11, and of course, Midge Purse is gone for the whole year.
That was part of the calculus, right? Is like it's a lot of players who've had a lot of injuries and have a lot of priorities alongside their club performances to manage. So it's a difficult one to project moving forward.
ASA right now, their non-penalty XG differential per game by that model, they're sitting 6th.
Yeah.
That's fine. They're positive, and that's a playoff spot.
I think they're about 0 if you take the Dash game out, which is like the vast majority of their XGD.
But Kieran, everybody gets to play the Dash, you know.
And as we saw, Angel City over the weekend, they got to play Houston Dash. Didn't really work out.
No.
Let's keep the train moving here. Next up will be the Portland Thorns. Eric, you had them 2nd before the season started. I had them 3rd. Right now, ASA's non-penalty XG differential per game has them in 3rd, just behind KC and Orlando. But they are bunched very, very close together with other teams like Washington, Louisville, Gotham. They've been beset by injuries as well. Morgan Weaver is going to be out for an extended period of time. They have had to shuffle their midfield a great deal. It seems like Janine Becky has drawn the short straw on that and is coming off the bench. Christine Sinclair is back in the starting 11, which is Wild. And they have a new head coach in Rob Gale. If you look at their performances under Mike Norris and under Rob Gale, they're basically the same team. It's just things are starting to go their way. Eric, as the hometown Portland boy, where are you at with the Thorns?
Well, they did something this weekend that they'd never done before. They won their 5th game in a row, which is wild to me that they'd never done that before. That said, I think in total, this team was never as bad as their opening 4 games looked by record, and is not as good as their next 5 games have suggested that they are. But Sophia Smith is playing on a completely different level, and I think when you have somebody like that, you are in with a shout all the time. I think I feel actually pretty good about having the Thorns second in preseason. I kind of feel like this team has an incredible number of weapons. Some of the weapons that we'd expected to fire sooner haven't hit yet, and they're still winning, and they're still putting up decent numbers. I mean, we said a lot of 5-3s in Portland. That continues to look like it's going to be true. But if you're looking for a chaotic team that I feel like will still finish near top of the table, I think Portland's right there.
Kieran?
My one sentence would be, how quickly can we get Shelby Hogan out of the net? I think there is like only one true weakness in this team, and I think that's in goal. Like, I think that is fundamentally the weakest by far aspect of this team. That if you were to say in 6 months' time what happened, that's probably where I would point. They traded for Emily Alvarado, who is similarly bad based on the historical data that we have from her time in France. So I think they're like about where I kind of expected, maybe a little bit worse. They kind of have the right amount of points for like the distribution of performances they've had. It's just come in a weird sequence.
Regarding Hogan, if you average a bunch of different post-shot XG shot-stopping models together, which you should do because one on their own, especially in small samples, can be weird and noisy, Shelby Hogan's at the bottom of the list. She has faced more difficult than average shots among the everyday keepers in the league this year, but she is still not coming close to saving what she should be saving. And we have all noticed the crazy gaffes that have sometimes led to opponents' goals, especially in the early part of the year. So Karina LeBlanc's going to be white-knuckling it and potentially going to need to get another keeper in the summer.
Okay, so I have a couple of quick ones because I didn't do the one sentence. Hogan's a hulking mess. We also have Hogan's anti-heroics.
That's a good one.
Let's talk about the North Carolina Courage, who we have gone in depth on this season and created sort of a small debate point about the ways in which they use their high possession style as a defensive tool, whether or not they can be effective when they are behind in a game and need to make up a scoreline in order to get a result. They haven't been good at doing that recently because they have gone behind early and have not been able to close the gaps. They, by ASA, are sitting below average on their non-penalty XG differential, just a little bit below average. They are sitting in 7th place at the moment by that metric. Eric, what are we thinking about how the Courage are looking at the moment?
They're what we thought they were. You know, you and I had them 6th preseason. I feel like they're 6th, the 6th best team in this league. They are as one might expect.
Kieran?
Need a little juice. I think this team is like very decent. I think there's like the bones of a very strong system are going to keep them competitive. Like they're that team who like do the fundamentals pretty well. They're solid enough defensively. They've got a good goalie. They've got reasonable talent at every position, but they don't have difference makers, really. Like they don't have really anyone who's going to like truly pop for you. Taking the table that you have set and putting a delightful meal on it.
It's not for lack of trying from Ashley Sanchez to be that difference maker, but it's not really feeling consistent. Sometimes they look really strong, other times they look completely lost. That game against Orlando was incredibly telling for how poorly they played against a team that we're going to get into them later. No one assumed we're going to be the best team in the league or the second best team in the league. And Orlando kind of ran circles around them.
They've had a comically up and down XG total. If you look, it's like they either have 2.5 expected goals or they have half an expected goal, and there's nothing in between.
Speaking of excluding games against the Dash, North Carolina,
Granted, they've had a lot of results not go their way where they've outplayed their opponent and still lost. The Angel City game away comes to mind. But in the aggregate, they're just a shoulder shrug, as they were last year.
I continue to think that when you have a team that is so good at this two-facedness, just place them kind of in the middle. And that's kind of where we have them. It's funny because we talk about them as so wildly inconsistent, and yet I see the same creature every time I watch them. It's just the outcomes. I see a team that's like not particularly adventurous, and that sometimes gets punished for that, and other times benefits from not being particularly adventurous. I see a team that sometimes plays possession for possession's sake, and sometimes it works out. I see a team with a really low ceiling and a really high floor, and that feels like the 6th best team in the league. No plan B. That's a fine sentence to describe this season.
If you have enough talent to be able to play plan A over and over again and run over your opponents, that's great, but that's not what the Courage are, and have never been under Sean Ahas. Frankly, this is going to be a grind for a team that doesn't really like to grind out results. Speaking of a team who doesn't know a result if it hit them on the ass, the Houston Dash, who even despite the incredible heroics from erstwhile Angel City defender Paige Nielsen over the weekend, are still sitting in last place by basically every possible measurement you can make at the team level. They are 14th by ASA's non-penalty XG differential per game. Pretty much every other XG model is going to list them there. They are barely, improbably not on the bottom of the table because they just had these 2 weird wins against Bay FC and Angel City, both on the road.
And huge scalps, both of those, you know.
Right. Yeah. Really, you're proving your bona fides against those squads. I mean, Fran Alonso is playing slightly more pragmatically than he had the team playing earlier in the season, but is it really making much of a difference, Eric?
Fran, the opposite of Xabi Alonso, I think would be one way of describing it. Alonso's gotta go would be a fine one-off sentence. Modest hopes still dashed in Houston. I don't know. These are bad New York Post headlines, but I feel like all of them are applying. This is a very bad team that plays very badly.
Wake me up next year.
Oh.
I'll give Fran Alonso a smidge of a pass because I kind of think this roster just sucks. Like, I just don't think there's talent. There's maybe 2 players in the whole team that I like, and the rest of their team is like 30 or 31. Like, it's not like you have young players who are like bursting through, who are like, oh wow, I can totally see like Amanda West is going to be a huge contributor next year. No, they have like Ramona Bachman, who's like 34. Is like, oh man, they get the most gigantic get out of jail free card by moving off the worst contract in the entire league for amazing value, amazing positive value. And like, I don't know, there's nothing really that I'm like, I'm going to be watching for this.
They're using that money to sign Tarsiane.
This team is definitely one center back away from being really good.
That's what I was going to say. They're absolutely the team that I would describe as one piece away from having it sorted. They're like a box of Legos with no instruction.
Now we come to a team who has rapidly spiraled out of control as the season has gone on. Probably the team who has experienced the sharpest and steadiest decline in performances since the season began, and that's Angel City. They are currently 12th in ASA's non-penalty XG differential per game model. Negative 0.4 XG differential per game, which is a little bit scandalous if you ask me, but they have not handled their business well. They traded away the only legitimate defensive midfielder they had in Amandine Henry. We have yet to see how they're going to spend the transfer money that came in, getting rid of her and Paige Nielsen. Becky Tweed is not playing Messiah Bright, sticking with Sydney Leroux. Alyssa Thompson seems like a shell of her former self relative to her breakout rookie season. They are coughing up late leads in true Freya Coombe fashion, and I hope that this knocks the stars from people's eyes about how Becky Tweed was transforming the quote-unquote culture of this club. This team is a mess.
Yeah.
I picked them to finish 10th, and I think I wasn't mean enough. Yeah, this Angel shitty. We've gone with that one a lot of times. It's a box office bomb. Angel City falling apart faster than the crypto it was built on.
That's a good one.
We beat the same drum. Evan and I have been doing it literally since their expansion opening day. It's just a really tough team. You know, it's not like they don't have component pieces that couldn't work together. Where they don't have pieces that work, feel like a really big problem. I don't think they're going to be this bad, but I don't think they're going to be a ton better than this.
Kieran?
Pick a direction. You are not a good team, and you are playing 30, 34, 33, 34, 33, 36. If you are good and are challenging, no problem. I'm not going to begrudge anyone for playing the 32-year-old over the 22-year-old when you're good. I understand. Young players make mistakes. You're not good. You're terrible. Why is take your pick of whatever young player not playing more? Why does Giselle Thompson have 24 minutes? Even if she's bad, she literally cannot be that much worse.
It's a bunch of over 30s and a bunch of teenagers. And the over 30s seem to be winning out. 33-year-old Jasmine Spencer is starting at right back over Thompson. 34-year-old Sydney Leroux is starting over 23-year-old Messiah Bright. Casey Fair hasn't sniffed the pitch. Kennedy Fuller is in and out of the lineup without any real consistency. As you say, Becky Tweed can't seem to stick or twist. There doesn't seem to be any long-term plan coming down from the front office. Surprise, surprise. You're not going to sell that stadium out forever if you keep playing like this. The snake oil is going to fade, Julie Ehrman. Figure it the fuck out. All right, we've ditched the detritus. Let's get into the good shit here. We call our show Expected Own Goals for a reason, folks. It's because our takes often go sideways real fast. And this season has really, really demonstrated how quickly that can happen. So we are also all about transparency and accountability. We own our mistakes here at Expected Own Goals. So the first few categories that we're going to start rattling off are putting all three of us right in the bullseye and having to admit where we were most incorrect about our preseason projections. So everybody's going to get their worst own goal, by which we mean a team we thought were going to be good, who are actually bad, and then the reverse, where our best own goal is the team we thought was going to be bad, has actually turned out to be good. So, Kieran, as the guest of honor, let's start with your worst own goal.
Perhaps the largest own goal. The Sunderland defender who had a sliced volley into his own top corner. There's a few. During the first week of the season, I watched Utah go down 2-1 to Chicago, in which I thought they played actually quite good, and I was reasonably impressed. And I said, guys, I think Utah might be good. Boy, oh boy, has that not played out.
Without the presence of Houston's calamities, Utah would be comfortably at the bottom of the table in just about every metric you could come up with to measure team underlying performance. They sit 13th. By ASA's non-penalty XG differential per game metric. They've got a terrible attack, they have a terrible defense, and no player that seems like they could potentially be a game changer. What are you going to do, Amy Rodriguez?
Poor Hannah Bedford, who has 3.1 XG and no goals. And that's the best attacker they have.
I'll put it this way. It was an active discussion on Twitter the other night about converting Hannah Bedford to a center back or a fullback.
Wow.
So I think the awkward thing about them is that you can actually buy upside with this group. If we compare to Angel City, who we just ripped on, playing all 35-year-olds, Utah play basically nobody over the age of 27. They are all young. And I think we talked about this in preseason when we did the Bay Utah thing, that we all kind of thought they would suck. But maybe by the end of the season, they would have figured out who of this collection of also-rans and backups is actually a starting caliber player, and we can do something with them, or we can trade them for more stuff and do this again, or whatever. The unfortunate is that there is the probability that none of them are better than backups. And if that's the case, you have a lot of players on your roster that you don't want.
Allie Sentner is not a good long-range shooter.
No.
I know that she shoots from long range a lot, and I know that she did it in college, and I know that she has a very powerful shot. I got to peek behind the curtain at some StatsBomb post-shot XG data, which does include shot velocity, shot power, in addition to shot placement. And there is some evidence to suggest that maybe she is legitimately adding some value to those shots just through how hard she hits the ball. And she hits the ball very, very hard. But generally speaking, this is not a consistent skill that you can repeat over and over again, no matter how exciting or cool that it looks. And if that's going to be one of the primary elements of your attack, is just having Allie Sentner beat somebody 1v1 at the edge of the box and then try to tattoo it at an acute angle, I fear for you. Because that is just not something that she's going to be able to do over and over and over again.
Can I give an optimist case on Allie Sentner?
Sure. She's the number 1 overall pick. I mean, she's 20 years old. There's still theoretically tons of upside here.
So I want to say there's probably more than just theoretical upside. One of the things that is really interesting about her is, and we see this in G Plus a lot, is she basically profiles as an average midfielder-y winger, which is really hard for a team that's terrible, especially when you throw away so many possessions shooting from 35 yards. one of the most interesting parts of that is that a lot of her predictive skills for like you as a midfieldery winger, how many times do you get into the box a game? How many times do you receive progressive passes? How many times do you create shots with your passing? Those sorts of things actually show up as quite high, where she's not a progressive passer, but she is actually quite good at being progressive ahead of the ball. And it's one of those things that, like, okay, you have this skill set now with a team who is like wholly unequipped to get you the ball in dangerous areas. I kind of get why you are just pinging it. If they are able to like leverage her skill set to generate shots in a situation, it's kind of like the thing we talked about with the Angel City wingers, where like if they played for a team who could actually get them the ball into 1v1s on the edge of the box instead of 1v1s at half, it would be beneficial. I would be very curious to see what her stat profile would look like. It's very hard to be bad when you take 3 shots a game and create 3.5 shots a game. Like that's just it's very hard to not be a positive value player there.
This happens a lot in the NBA and the WNBA, where you just sort of have like one player that needs to do the bulk of the shooting and ends up just by pure volume not looking particularly impressive, but, you know, like in a street ball sense is impressive. Allie Sentner's just doing like a Trae Young thing right now. I feel like it's just like, this is not a very good team. Allie Sentner is taking a lot of long pot shots. That said, you know, half of them are ending up on target. She's hitting the absolute snot out of them. Her average xG is 0.07, which is not good, but it's not anywhere near as bad as other bad long-range shooters in the league are. You know, like she's taking them not at the worst possible place. Her shot distance is just under 21 yards per average shot. Again, not good, but like given what we can see in her technique, I'm just not willing to like write her off as much as her shooting being almost like a sort of flaw that comes out of the team she's a part of, as opposed to necessarily a design flaw in Allie Sentner, the player. I think you're just dealing with a very good player who's like, fuck it, I gotta shoot. No, but we're not going to find goals anywhere else.
Because nobody else is going to be creative or incisive. Yeah, I mean, I think that you just would hope that as the season goes on, she can find ways to balance those things out by just getting into the box a little bit more. I mean, she's basically getting 3 touches in the box per game. That's a shade below average for a non-defender. To Kieran's point, which is a great one, all of that's actually kind of impressive given the dross that surrounds her. Eric, what was your worst own goal?
You've been quite generous to me when you assess this because we shared this own goal. We both picked San Diego 4th, and I would argue that I probably have some other bad own goals, but San Diego 4th is fine. San Diego is just not a very good team, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more when we start talking about individuals and why I think that's happening. But some combination of injuries, and I think Casey Stoney's sauce no longer working as well as it did lands you with a team that looks not as competent on defense as they have historically and just as inept on offense as they have historically. And that combination is going to not result in you being a particularly good team. San Diego 4th, where are they in the XG table?
They're 8th.
I don't think this is like so irretrievably bad. I don't think that like San Diego is without hope, but it's not my best look. I'm just as surprised as I think everyone who watched this league last year is with sort of the sum total of San Diego's performances. This is a good team that I thought had the potential to be a great team, and I think instead is just an all right team.
It has to be said that, as you mentioned, injuries, Abby Dahlkemper and Naomi Girma have missed significant time. Alex Morgan has missed significant time. Jaden Shaw, it appears, is going to miss significant time after her ankle injury over the weekend. These are major, major pieces. And if your defense is going to work the way you want it to, you need Girma in the game. As well as, you know, a team that likes to build a solid defensive structure and then let their individuals figure it out. Well, that's what Shaw and Morgan are there to do. So if you don't have them, that's going to dry up the chances. And then maybe the most significant thing to me is that Stoney has not figured out how to get Jaden Shaw and Savannah McCaskill playing together properly. I don't think.
No, I'm inclined to agree. And I think when you add in another like extremely ball dominant player in Maria Sanchez, like that does not become an easier problem to solve. I think calling this an own goal is probably a little bit harsh this early in the season. The Wave are in 8th. They're 5 points out of 4th. And the skeleton is still good enough, and Stoney has enough of a track record that, like, over the next however many games, like, there's a lot of room to dig yourself out of this fairly shallow hole. And the other part of it is, like, their headline metrics are pretty bad, but like some other teams who, like, beat up on the dash and then that's their whole expected goal difference, they're like the fifth best XGD if you take out getting just destroyed by Orlando. Like, I think they're like -2.5, and they lost that game by like 3.5 XG. I think if I was a Wave fan, my alarm bells would be going off, but I like wouldn't be sure if it's just a fire drill or a real fire.
It was actually difficult to find an egregious own goal for Eric in this direction. So kudos to you.
They're all coming the other direction.
There is one, but as we are about to get to very shortly, I don't think we could include it twice.
There's a reason it wasn't thrown to him, and it's something that I'm going to have to wear.
Evan and I shared fourth place as a San Diego pick, but Evan and I had different 2 and 3s. Evan, would you like to announce your worst own goal?
I had BFC in second place.
I had them in third. Yeah.
There are some things I want to say here. And first of all, as always, when we discuss BFC here on Expected Owns Goals, in full disclosure, ASA alum Ariel Dror is the director of data analytics at the team. Ariel is somebody we love and respect and admire a great deal for everything that she has done for the site and also for what she's doing for BFC. But this team right now is sitting...
Oh my God.
They are sitting, and this is actually incredible and may just speak to the parity of the league more than anything else. By ASA's XG diff, they are 10th, which is owed entirely to the reason that we got so excited about them going into the year, which is they are still able to generate a lot of really, really good chances, thanks to Asisato Shwala, Rachel Kundananji, Tess Bodie at times, have been more or less as advertised. Kundananji has cooled off a little bit from her early couple of games, but in the main, this is an attack that is quite functional, parentheses, when you allow those players to play. The problem with them is that Albertine Montoya is so committed to keeping his fullbacks high and keeping everybody pressing and wanting to push the ball aggressively forward through possession that they fold like a cheap card table when the ball is going in the other direction. And in my defense, I did not think that a team with Emily Menges, Alex Luera, and Caprice Didasco would be this bad defensively. I think that's actually a legitimate surprise to just how poorly those players have performed. Savvy King, number 2 overall pick, she's been a disaster at left back. I don't think there's any equivocating about that. In goal, Lishian Prul she's worth paying attention to.
She goal keeps like a player with a face tattoo. I'll put it that way.
The thing that I think I really have to own is that maybe I underrated just how desperately they probably needed another quality central midfielder. I think I did not give that the seriousness that it probably deserved. And now with Alex Luera tearing her ACL, you do not know what the hell kind of production is going to come out of midfield. I think the other part is like maybe we should have been less excited about Dana Castellanos, who has been legitimately one of the worst attacking midfielders in the league this year.
For me, you know that underpants gnomes meme from South Park? The back line is collect underpants, and the front line is profit, and the middle of the field is question mark. What I mean by that is the defense is a dubious plan. The midfield is no plan at all.
Yeah.
And the front line is profit. And when you watch what like Rachel Kundananji did against the Thorns on that tremendous individual effort goal, you can see why spending the money that they spent will probably end up working in the direction of profit. It's just the gaps between how one gets the ball in transition to them. It's a much bigger problem than I think anybody had anticipated. Moreover, I think that, and maybe we want to talk about Montoya now, I just think if you could sack a coach tomorrow in the league, is he your guy?
I think there is no coach in the league that is doing more of a detriment to the talent on their team than he is. I don't like being like bloodthirsty for people's jobs, but I think at the end of the day, like you have effectively been given 2 of the 10 best attackers on the planet, at least the 10 best attackers in the league, and you at best have a mid-table attack. Their progression metrics are actually quite good. Like they score quite highly in progressive passes, in final third touches and stuff like that, but they're the worst defensive transition team in the league. They play North Carolina Courage soccer without any of the benefits, and they have not changed even one thing. They did very briefly played like a weird 4-3-1-2 with Castellanos as a false 9 against Portland, and it was by far their best performance of the entire season. And they immediately said, no, never again. 4-3-3, we didn't turn the ball over enough. Let's go back to that. Also, I should caveat all this with these are my opinions, just putting that out there. It's very frustrating to watch a team do things wrong and games still be close. They keep losing by 1 in reasonably close XGD games, and it's oh my god, if you didn't play 12 short corners a game, or oh my god, you actually thought about defensive transitions, or oh my god, you didn't make Tess Bodie play as a 6 on her own sometimes. These are things that are just free lunch. So that has been very frustrating with this team. And I think second and third was probably aggressive from the jump. I think I had them 5th. Nor could anyone have predicted Loera's knee would explode. But this team is probably reasonably capped out. They don't have a ton of avenues to improve the team because they've got a lot of contracts. I don't really know where they go from here.
It just strikes me as a team that has some real reckoning to do with its squad construction, but the first and best way to do that is to get rid of the person who consistently deploys the squad poorly. Especially
when they employ as a consultant Matt Potter, who has been a good manager in this league.
Yes, he has.
Yep.
Got his team to a championship in 2022, incidentally.
The only way one could be enjoying this base season is as a masochist. And I feel for these fans who have shown up in great numbers watching this team consistently get the least possible out of the talent that they have on hand.
Shout out to the Everything Bagels podcast.
Oh, I love them.
Our friends Anna and Zach. Our hearts are with you for everything that you have had to deal with these past 2 months. All right, guys, enough downer stuff. Let's pick ourselves up. Let's talk about our best own goals. Teams we thought were going to stink, who have been absolutely dazzling us. Kieran?
Perhaps the biggest dazzler. I thought Orlando would be not great. I thought the Masai Bright trade, I understood wanting to honor the player's wishes. I didn't really understand getting basically very little back for her. And I will caveat that I thought this before they signed Barbara Banda, which is a fairly large caveat in their team success. But one of the things, Evan, that you guys tweeted from the Expected Own Goals account a few weeks ago that I was oh, wow, I had no idea, was how far their underlying metrics had crept up over the second half of last season. There's a very interesting narrative to team development there, where sometimes we talk about you hear this in the financial world where you talk about sequencing bias, or in gambling where you can make 10 trades or whatever and get 5 right, 5 wrong, but if the 5 wrong happen first, you're cooked. I think that kind of happened with Orlando last year, where the first half of the season went so poorly that it tanked everyone's opinion of them, regardless of how much they recovered in the second half of the season, especially, at least my own. And they're legit good. They are super, super tight defensively. They have unbelievable players in transition. The vibes are pretty good. They're a legit team.
Yeah, Banda's firing off 6 shots per 90. Yeah, they're in great shape. Yeah, no, it's a come on.
You know what's fun about Banda is that this has been a thing in NWSL for a while, was who's going to be the one who pays the fee? And a lot of teams were man, we don't know how China translation's going to happen. Obviously she's amazing, but is she that big a fee and that big wages amazing? I don't know. Shout out to Haley Carter getting ownership to buy in and being we're going to do it, because it has worked out magnificently. But a lot of people were very unsure about the league translation from China.
And I don't think that's wrong. We don't know what you do when you're playing in Shanghai for 30 weeks a year. Back-to-back hat tricks during the COVID Olympics is not enough of a data point to suggest that you can hang in what is whether or not it's the best league in the world, it is certainly the most competitive league in the world. That's a big ask. My jaw is on the floor with what she's doing right now. It's a small sample. Teams are going to figure out how to defend her. They're going to figure out how to not only defend her, but also close gaps around her so that they won't open up because of double teaming. This will not go on forever. But given the skill set, given the diversity of the skill set here, given all the ways in which she can beat you, and also, by the way, she has Adriana playing off of her, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, this is an MVP candidate already after only 5 games. This is extraordinary stuff. And by the way, they were a great team before she showed up.
Yeah, that's the thing. I really think, for as bad as Albertine Montoya has been, Seb Hines has been good. Seb Hines has just been so spectacular in properly assessing the talent he has on hand and building a system around that talent and maximizing each player in each position to get the most out of each of them. And it's non-philosophical approach of assessing one's own team's talent and then deploying it in the best possible way. They are not a possession team. They're not even a high press. They press and then they drop. And then they are solid defensively, and then they hit you so hard on the counter you don't even know what's left. They're great. I mean, they can do many different things, and Banda is the perfect talisman for a team that is that defensively solid. I mean, this team, to me, feels like they are here to stay.
Yeah, and again, Kieran, it's not even that they got better than the second half of the year last year. Like, if you chop out the first month of 2023, just ignore it, and then just look at everything that goes on after that, the Pride were probably the best team of the year. That's what's so incredible about this, that Hines had to sift through a lot of shit once he took that job over in June of 2022 to figure out what he had available to him. But once he did that, it hasn't stopped. Emily Sams is now, I think, unquestionably an elite center back in the league. Kylie Strom is one of the best defensive fullbacks in the league. Haley McCutcheon apparently can also play in central midfield when she feels like it. Julie Doyle and Ali Watt are feasting on Barbara Banda's leftovers at their leisure. And somehow Marta isn't falling on her ass. And we also have Morgan Gotrot to ping passes from deep if you need it. Adriana and Banda have not played much together yet, but now that they are both fully fit in here, you need Banda to play with her back to goal so Adriana can run in behind. Cool. You want Adriana to take somebody on 1v1 while Banda is just lurking around and not allowing any center back to stick to her? Cool. You want to play Banda to feet? Well, guess what? Whoever is marking her is going to be eating grass in about half a second because she's that strong. You need Banda to run in behind and just beat everybody for pace. Well, she can do that too. You need her to take 3 extra touches because 4 defenders are around her until she finds the seam where she can put the shot in the upper 90. Yeah, she can do that. She's the smartest runner off the ball in the league right now, in my opinion. There is nobody who is more dangerous, who seems to always be in completely open space for an easy shot than her. It's stupid to speak this way when somebody has only played for 400 minutes, but I don't know if the NWSL has seen a player quite like her.
A fun Banda stat, just to really drive home that the answer is no.
First of all, they're all fun, but I can't wait to hear what you got.
It really drives home that no, in fact, the NWSL has never seen a player like Barbara Banda. It's only 436 minutes or something like that, so keep that in mind. But through that 436 minutes, Banda is putting up more G+ per 96 than the last 3 best players in the league combined, which is obscene. She's putting up over half a goals added a game. So to put that in context, when we built the model, we tested it on 2 players, Sophia Smith, who was destroying the model, and Lionel Messi. Messi's best ever seasons that we had in the data were 0.4. And she's at 0.58. So, yeah, she's 50% better than Messi has ever been through the first 5 games. I don't think she's going to continue to put up 0.6 G+ per game.
But so fucking what? What an incredible ceiling to fall from.
If she is to fall to 25% of that for the rest of the year, she is probably still the best player in the league.
And look at the teams that she's played. It's not like she's just played Houston and Utah and Bay since she's shown up. Her first game was against San Diego. She started against North Carolina, Louisville, and Washington. All very good defenses.
I think one of the things that suits her, she's a real team. So they don't have to play her every game when the stupid tournament is happening in the summer and everything is a bit of a mess and they play 3 times in a week and with travel in between, they don't have to play her. And I think that is a huge thing.
Yeah, they didn't for the first 4 games of the season, and they were fine. And I think, small sample, Can she keep up this level of production? Probably not, but it's an incredibly high ceiling to start from. And the other thing is, given the versatility of her skill set and given the talent around her, it actually is going to be kind of difficult for defenses to figure them out. Because if you double team Banda, you're going to leave Adriana or Julie Doyle open. If you try to put two on Adriana and Banda and take them out of the game, well, Ali Watt can run in behind. And then again, like, it's not just that like Banda is faster than everybody and can get in behind defenses. She does 5,000 other things incredibly well. That's, I think, what is so remarkable about her. I think that, fine, all right, 0.8 non-penalty XG per 96 is going to come down, but I think that the only thing that's really going to stop her is an injury. We could probably talk about the Pride forever and ever and ever, but we have to keep this show moving. Eric, your best own goal.
We will cover why I think about this in greater depth in part 2 this week. I picked Kansas City to finish 12th.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
And you know what? I felt good about where I placed Louisville, and they've impressed, but I really just have to eat this one real hard. Kansas City is just an offensive juggernaut. Who saw that coming? I certainly did not. The reasons behind it are probably the best surprises of the year. 2 of them, in fact. Frankly, 3 of them. But I'm just going to talk about one here, which is the sort of, oh yeah, it turns out Vlatko Andonovski, good coach. We slept on that. He had a shitty World Cup. He wasn't suited for that U.S. women's job. But his track record in the NWSL is excellent. And he came back to Kansas City with a chip on his shoulder. And he has built a team that plays nothing like the U.S. women last summer. They attack absolutely relentlessly, and then they just let off. But usually by then, they have generated a fuck ton of XG or a fuck ton of goals or both, and they just brutalize you. They feel really sustainable to me. Evan, where are they in the XG table?
They're number 1.
By a lot, I believe.
By a mile.
So to give you context, so Orlando is second at 0.76 non-penalty XG differential per game. Kansas City is at 0.96. That is a legitimate gap.
If you beat a team by an XG every game, you're going to win a lot of games.
It's incredible. And of course, players we're talking about are Temwa Chewinga and Bia Zanerato. And again, we'll address them in more depth. But they're doing this while only having 46% of the ball on average per game because they really don't give a shit. And they're not that bad defensively, which is kind of amazing. So by ASA's non-penalty, if you're just looking at non-penalty goals, they're at 4th. Regardless, that's still, when you pair the 4th best defense with the best by a mile offense, this is what you get.
I don't feel like I've watched a team like this since those like very early Klopp Dortmund teams that is just like so willing to just like bash your head in with hyper aggressive press. They're willing to take big chances, but they're actually defensively like really solid. And their attacking pieces work and flow together nicely. This is a really special team. I use this term too often, but they're a unicorn as well. This is kind of a team that Philippe Petit on a wire between the World Trade Centers. It's an act.
9.3 passes per defensive action. That's second in the league. They're capitalizing on that by generating 13.5 turnovers in the final third every single game. That's number 1. Nearly 4 of those final third turnovers turn into shots. That's first in the league by a lot, by almost a shot and a half. They are relentless. And like you said, they do not care if you come at them later in games.
And I'll spoil this one little Chewinga nugget because I know we don't rate big chances that highly, but nobody has missed more big chances so far than Temwa Chewinga. And she has 5 goals. Like, that's nuts. This is a very serious team.
I was kind of surprised that people were so down on them because, well, I mean, but I think like, and I agree, like it was kind of actually quite unclear how he was going to get this team to play the very attacking style that he's like kind of been, but has not always been. I keep thinking about this team like, hey, imagine if you had Cece Kaiser instead of Nisha Prince.
That's the thing. They took a bath on that trade in terms of quality, and it didn't matter.
The one thing that kind of has me hung up about them, not hung up, but a thing that I am kind of pumping the brakes on is those transition stats that you just mentioned, Evan. It is very, very difficult to continuously get transitions that good. Like there is a certain amount of Yes, having lots of transitions is amazing. Everyone gets better quality shots in transition than they do from possession play. That is a fact of soccer. It is unusual to get chances that good and to get them that consistently from the transitions you generate. So I would say I still think they're probably the best attack in the league. Like, I wouldn't say that won't be true, but I would be surprised if in another 10 games they are still a +1 expected goal difference per game team.
As the season wears on, as every Marcelo Bielsa team in history has demonstrated, like, you run out of gas at some point. So how do you manage and adapt to preserve and conserve your high-flying players' energy? That I can see them coming back to earth a little bit.
Yeah, but also they take breaks in the game.
They absolutely do.
50-minute breaks sometimes.
Here's a crazy one for you. They have a second overall pick who just does not play for them and is not good. Michelle Cooper. Like, at what point do you just, like, trade her? Get something good back. Get some depth. Get some use. Send it to a team who wants young players. Send her to Houston.
It's amazing how much they wounded themselves with Cece Kaiser and Michelle Cooper and are still this good. Like, you just typically don't make those kinds of mistakes.
Eric, in your defense, I think that this lineup was a black box at the start of the season. Like, Temwa Chewinga had the Barbara Banda problem. Like, how does China translate over here? Bia Zanerato coming from Palmeiras.
She's been way better than I expected.
And like Claire Hutton. Like, how did you know that Claire Hutton was going to be your starting number 6 at the age of 18? How did you know that Vanessa DiBernardo would fit in so seamlessly further up the field? As good as a playmaker from deep as she is, that's still just a totally different area to operate in, and she hasn't skipped a beat. I don't think any of that could have been predicted before the season started.
In a weird sense, that opener, maybe the best regular season NWSL game of all time between Portland and Kansas City.
Yeah, an insane.
At the time, I think we thought of this as this freak show of a game.
Yeah.
And instead, it sort of feels like an expression of both teams' truest selves. These are both pretty good teams. These are both teams that will attack relentlessly and maybe have a question mark at the back. Obviously, they both wildly overperformed the XG in that game. But, like, that game felt more like a high wire act, and I feel like we're just seeing shades of both of those teams sustain themselves throughout the course of this season. Like, Portland is not as good as Kansas City, and Kansas City is doing insane stuff.
My best own goal is Racing Louisville, a team that I didn't think was necessarily going to be bad, but we just didn't know how it was all going to fit together. So I had them in 9th place. They are currently sitting in 5th place by ASA's non-penalty XG differential per game model. But what is really interesting about Louisville and the way that Bevianas has built them is that they don't create a lot of chances. But when they do, they are excellent. They do not concede a lot of chances. But when they do, they're bad for the opposition. Like, on a per chance level, this team does not give up a lot, and it creates a lot of dangerous shit, which is kind of what you want from a team that doesn't necessarily have the talent to match, the real heavy hitters. Not that they don't have talent, they obviously do, but Raylan Turner, Emma Sears have been your 2 main attacking weapons, and like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? Ellie Piquiamsa tore her ACL, and the back line hasn't really missed a beat. Carson Pickett is doing Carson Pickett things again and being absolutely deadly on the left wing. It's been a really interesting tactical evolution to watch in the way that Giannis has handled this squad, to the point where now I think maybe they don't have a playoff game at home, but I think they are a pretty solid playoff contender. Even though a lot of results aren't going their way, which is a whole other thing. But if those can turn around, then they're going to be fine.
I think the 2 most interesting things about Louisville and their rise, as it were, is that 1, they're doing it off of a pretty average Katie Lund season. This is not Katie Lund backpacking them up the table. And the other is that this is still a super young team. Not super young, but Abby Erceg and Carson Pickett are the only real older players who are contributing, and Carson Pickett's not even 31. Other than that, it's a lot of younger than 27-year-olds. Also, Savannah DeMello is having a fairly mid-season by her standards, and that's that they are getting the output they are getting from the rest of their team, even while she's doing that, is quite impressive.
I just sort of feel like, Evan, ye of little faith, you picked 72 Racing Louisville players last year for your best 11.
Yeah.
You've been the biggest Racing Louisville supporter. You've gone on record about this for a long time, and you just had a wobble, I think, in your preseason prediction.
At the individual level, they were all great. At the team level, they were bad, like legitimately bad last year. And I didn't deny that. But this year, they're legitimately good.
Absolutely. My only concern with them is if they see a drop-off in form, they are really going to rue those 5 draws that they didn't convert their advantages into wins. This is a team that does not have a points total that is suggested by their performance.
We're going to talk about one team who has really banked a lot of points despite whatever underlying performances they're demonstrating. Louisville does not have that luxury. They need to start getting results immediately if they are actually going to get in the playoffs. But they have the weapons to do it. Taylor Flint looks like a player reborn. I think she's playing better than she has in the last couple of years. Yeah, to be able to find that level of individual creation without DeMello on the field has been very, very impressive. Emma Sears, these were low draft picks. These were not necessarily blue chip prospects coming out of college. And Sears has been the best substitute in the league, bar none, every time she's come off the bench, to the point where she's played herself into a starting 11 role, which may not suit her, but we'll talk about that in another day. If you can avoid giving up the big chances and you can create the big chances, even though you don't have a lot of the ball, you're going to turn it around. And we are going to stop part 1 there. Thank you so much for listening. You can rate us, review us, and follow us wherever you get podcasts. Be sure to rate us 5 stars if you are going to rate us at all. Follow us on all social media channels at xOwnGoals. That's the letter xOwnGoals. And if you think we have another own goal that you haven't heard on this episode already, please email us at expectedowngoals@gmail.com. That's the letter expectedowngoals@gmail.com. We will be back later this week with part 2 of our third of the season vibe check, talking about the luckiest team, the unluckiest team, and a bunch of players who we think are the biggest surprises and disappointments of the season so far. So be sure to tune in for that. Until then, toodaloo, folks.